There's this moment right before you realise someone's betrayed you, where everything still feels okay. You're standing there, smiling, nodding along, maybe even laughing. And then something shifts. A sentence, a gesture, a face in the crowd, and your stomach drops. You start rewinding things in your head even as it's still happening. It's like your body knows before your mind catches up. That moment for me was on my wedding day. And if I'm being really honest, it probably started long before I was in that rented silk dress, standing under a floral arch I didn't pick, surrounded by people who didn't really know me. But back then, I was still pretending everything was normal. It started 3 years ago. I met Grant at a friend's Halloween party. I was dressed as a busted version of Lara Croft, cargo shorts, fake holster, ripped tank. He came as Ted Lasso, complete with the moustache and the little whistle. We were both standing near the punch bowl, making fun of someone's attempt at mummy cupcakes when he said, "I've never seen someone look so badass and so lost at the same time." I laughed, rolled my eyes and said, "I'm mostly here for the snacks." We talked the rest of the night. About our terrible first jobs. His was managing a Hot Topic, mine was folding denim at Old Navy. About the shows we swore we'd never finish, but always did. I'm looking at you, Grey's Anatomy. About our weird families, our boring apartments, our dreams of doing something that actually mattered. It felt easy, natural. Grant had this calmness to him. He was one of those guys who could walk into a room and make it feel less chaotic. He didn't talk over people. He listened. He made me feel heard, which was new for me. I'd dated before, a couple of serious relationships, a bunch of not-so-serious ones. But there was always something off. Too much drama, too much control, or the creeping realisation that I was just filling a role they'd cast before they even met me. With Grant, it felt like I could exhale. We moved in together after a year. I had a one-bedroom in East Nashville, and he had a loft above a bike shop in Germantown, but we ended up at mine because it had laundry in unit and a balcony. Simple math. Things were good, mostly. We worked different hours. I was a graphic designer at a boutique agency. He was a manager at a mid-sized logistics company. But we synced up at night. Wine and leftovers on the couch, shared Spotify playlists, Sunday grocery runs. The only real sore spot was his mum, Valerie. I met her 6 months into our relationship. She invited us over for dinner at her house in Brentwood, one of those big, beige, custom-built places that all kind of look the same. I brought a bottle of wine and a loaf of rosemary bread from the farmer's market. She barely looked at it. "Oh," she said, taking the bag without making eye contact. "I don't usually eat carbs after 5. That was her opener. Dinner was roast chicken, asparagus, and some kind of quinoa thing that tasted like regret. She asked me where I went to college, UT Knoxville. And then asked again, like she didn't hear me right. "No, I mean your real school." "That is my real school," I said. She gave me a tight smile. "I thought Grant was dating someone who went to Vanderbilt." Later, in the car, I told Grant it was weird. He said she was just like that I shouldn't take it personally. "She'll warm up eventually," he said. "She's tough on everyone." But she wasn't tough on him, or on his sister, Allison, or her husband, Brian, who made dad jokes and sold insurance. She was only tough on me. She made comments about my hair. "You'd look more professional if it was straight." About my job. Graphic design. So, like, flyers? About my parents. "Oh, are they still together?" At every event, birthdays, barbecues, even Grant's cousin's engagement party, she found a way to needle me. Always with a smile. Always with plausible deniability. I tried to bring it up gently. "She's kind of mean to me," I said one night while we were brushing our teeth. "She's just stressed," he mumbled through his toothbrush. "It's not about you." But it was about me. I started keeping track. The subtle insults, the corrections, the digs dressed up as jokes. I wrote them down in my notes app like evidence. "I'm surprised you're not wearing black. It's more forgiving." "Oh, you don't know how to make a roux? Huh. You're not a real dog person until you've had one from a breeder." Still, I tried. I brought flowers when we visited. I offered to help in the kitchen. I complimented her hideous vases. And Grant kept saying the same thing. Just ignore it. I did, for a long time. When we got engaged, she didn't even pretend to be happy. She blinked at the ring. A simple vintage oval I'd picked with Grant from a little shop in Atlanta, and said, "Oh, dainty." Then she opened a bottle of wine and toasted herself for letting go of her baby. I thought it couldn't get worse. I was wrong. Valerie immediately inserted herself into the wedding planning. She offered to help with the load, which turned out to mean control everything. She vetoed venues. She rejected every dress I liked. She sent a 17-point email about why our catering choices were pedestrian. When I suggested a live jazz trio for the reception, she replied, "People want to dance, not nap." I told Grant she was overstepping. He shrugged. "She's paying for part of it. Just let her feel involved." I said, "She doesn't want to feel involved. She wants to dictate it." He kissed my forehead. "You pick your battles. The only thing that matters is us." So I let things go. I let her pick the linens. I let her invite 28 people I didn't know. I let her talk me out of my favourite dress because she said the neckline was too modern for her taste. The venue was hers. The florist was hers. Even the playlist. She insisted on hiring a band she'd used for a charity gala. When I pushed back, Grant always said the same thing. "Don't let her ruin this for us." But it wasn't us anymore. It was me against them. Still, I kept the peace. The week before the wedding, I was in our apartment, practicing my vows in front of the mirror. Grant came in with takeout and watched me. "You really love me, huh?" he said. "Of course I do," he smiled. "Then don't worry about the other stuff. It'll be over in a day." And I believed him. I told myself the wedding is one day, the marriage is forever. But then the day came, and everything unravelled. The morning of the wedding, I woke up at 6:17 a.m. My phone was already buzzing with texts. The hairstylist was delayed. One of the bridesmaids had forgotten her shoes. The makeup artist needed parking instructions. I walked barefoot into the hotel bathroom and stared at myself in the mirror. Puffy eyes, dry lips, that tightness behind my ribcage. But I smiled. "You made it," I whispered to my reflection. "This is the hard part." At 11:45 a.m, Valerie showed up with a garment bag. "This isn't my dress," I said when I saw it. "It's your backup," she said. "The original got stained. Red wine. Tragic, really." I blinked. "What? How?" She sighed. "One of the servers dropped a tray. Your fiancé said you'd wear this instead." I looked at the bag. Beige. Strapless. Not mine. "I'm not wearing that," I said. She folded her arms. "Sweetheart, don't start drama today." I called Grant. He didn't pick up. I texted him. "What happened to my dress?" Read at 11:48 a.m. No reply. My maid of honour, Mia, tried to intervene. "We'll find your dress. Maybe there's time to clean it," Valerie cut in. "She's wearing this," Grant agreed. And I froze. Because that's when I knew. He wasn't protecting me. He was enabling her. He always had been. I wish I could tell you I stormed out, that I tossed the beige monstrosity to the ground, grabbed my girls, and bolted out the hotel suite in my robe like a rom-com rebel. But I didn't. I stood there, frozen, embarrassed, confused. Because how do you explain in real time that you're realising your fiancé may have never been on your side? Mia kept whispering, "We can fix this. We'll figure it out," as she tried to unzip the garment bag. The other bridesmaids were quiet, pretending to text, pretending not to notice that I was seconds away from crying through my primer. The dress inside wasn't just beige, it was stiff and boxy, the kind of thing you'd wear to a church function if your ex's mum was attending. It had lace panels and a weird netting at the bottom. I looked like a cake topper from 2004. I stared at myself in the mirror and heard Valerie in the corner muttering about too late to cause a scene, and "This is why you should have let me manage the dress fittings." Then Mia handed me her phone. "Try again," she mouthed. I called Grant again. Voicemail. I tried texting. "Please call me. We need to talk before this ceremony." Nothing. So I got dressed. Not because I wanted to, but Because I was scared. Scared that if I didn't go through with it, I'd prove Valerie right. That I was difficult, dramatic, not real wife material. Scared that maybe, after all of this, I'd built too much around a man who never planned to defend me. Scared of starting over. The ceremony was at a vineyard outside the city. It was one of those places you book a year in advance, all reclaimed wood and white roses, with Pinterest-style lighting and a lake in the background. I remember standing in the bridal suite, staring out at the water, thinking, I hate this place. Mia squeezed my hand. You don't have to do this, she whispered, even now. But I did, because everyone was already seated. The band was already playing. There were too many eyes, too many expectations. And somehow, in the middle of all that noise, I still clung to the hope that Grant didn't know. That he'd see me walking down the aisle in that awful dress and realise what happened. That he'd be horrified. When I stepped out, everyone stood. And there he was, smiling. Not a trace of surprise. Not even a flicker of discomfort. And that's when I knew he was in on it, all of it. The ceremony was a blur. I remember the officiant cracking a joke about how marriage is about compromise. I remember Grant tucking a strand of hair behind my ear during the vows. I remember the way Valerie dabbed her eyes with a monogrammed tissue, like she was watching a play she'd written. But mostly, I remember feeling hollow, like I wasn't inside my own body. The reception was worse. The seating chart had been changed, again. Mia and my parents were shoved to the back, while Valerie's friends from her yoga studio had front row seats to the dance floor. The signature cocktail was called Val's Vineyard Fizz. Not even kidding. The jazz trio I fought so hard for. Gone. Replaced by a wedding DJ who looked like he took requests via TikTok DM. And then came the speeches. Valerie insisted on giving hers after the best man. I didn't know until she took the mic, looked directly at me and said, I just want to thank Grant for making the kind of choice a mother can be proud of. She paused, glanced around, added, after all, not every man has the backbone to choose a woman who challenges him, even if she's unconventional. Laughter, polite, nervous laughter. I smiled, tight-lipped. My mum's face was stone. Mia looked like she was about to hurl her champagne glass. But Grant, he was laughing. Not awkwardly, not nervously, like he thought it was funny. Later that night, I asked him why he didn't say anything. About the dress, about his mum. You looked beautiful, he said, like that erased everything. That's not the point, he shrugged. You let it happen. And I swear to God, my breath caught in my throat, because he was right. I had let it happen. Over and over again. Every time I stayed quiet. Every time I let a comment slide, every time I told myself he was just trying to keep the peace. I hadn't been keeping the peace. I'd been training myself to disappear. 2 weeks after the wedding, we were back from our honeymoon. Cancun. Overpriced drinks, too much sun, polite silence. I came home tan and exhausted and carrying something heavy in my chest that I couldn't name. We had a dinner planned with his family. Just a little post-wedding celebration, he said. I told him I wasn't up for it. He frowned. You're not going to keep doing this every time my mum's around, are you? That's when I snapped. Every time she's around, I said. Grant, she's always around. She planned our wedding. She replaced my dress. She made a speech that was clearly aimed at humiliating me, and you laughed. He looked at me like I'd lost my mind. It was a joke. No, it wasn't. He stood up from the couch, walked into the kitchen, opened the fridge, took out a soda like we weren't having a conversation that could end our marriage. She loves you, he said casually. She just doesn't know how to show it. I blinked. That's not love, I said. That's control. And you let her. He turned, leaned against the counter, and looked at me with that same calm expression that used to make me feel safe. Now, it made me feel like I was yelling into a void. Okay, he said. Then what do you want to do? I wanted to scream, to throw something, to demand an apology. From him, from Valerie, from every person at that reception who saw what was happening and said nothing. Instead, I said, I'm going to Mia's for the night. He didn't stop me, didn't call, didn't text. Mia lived in a townhouse near Belmont. When I showed up with a duffel bag and blotchy cheeks, she didn't say anything, just handed me a glass of wine and opened her couch bed. We stayed up until 2 a.m. watching trash TV and eating leftover birthday cake from her fridge. At one point, I asked her, "Do you think I made a mistake?" She didn't answer right away. Then she said, "I think you gave someone every chance to do right by you, and he didn't take a single one." That hit me harder than anything Valerie ever said, because it was true. I'd been hoping, begging, bending for scraps of consideration and calling it love. The next morning, I checked my phone. No texts from Grant, but one from Valerie. "I hope you're not planning to make drama out of nothing. Grant deserves peace." Peace, that word again, used like a shield, a weapon, a silencer. I stared at it for a long time. Then I opened my laptop and started making a list. Things I changed for him. Gave up my favourite wedding dress. Changed our venue to one his mum picked. Let her invite 28 of her friends. Didn't argue when she switched the playlist. Sat through insults about my career, appearance and family. Accepted a wedding speech that was basically a roast. Moved Sunday dinners to Brentwood, even when I had deadlines. Spent holidays smiling through passive-aggressive digs. Things he changed for me. Nothing. When I finally went home 3 days later, the apartment felt staged, like he'd cleaned it to avoid a fight. My favourite candles were lit, a glass of wine was on the counter. He tried to hug me. I stepped back. "We need to talk," I said. He nodded. "Okay, can I go first?" I let him. He said he was sorry, that he should have been more aware, that he thought I could handle it, that his mum had strong opinions but meant well, that he didn't want to escalate things. Then he said the line I will never forget. "You know how she is. If you'd stood up for yourself sooner, maybe she would have respected you." I stared at him, open-mouthed, and all the pieces clicked into place. He didn't see her as the problem. He saw me as the weak link, because I didn't fight back hard enough, because I didn't prove myself to a woman who set me up to fail, because I didn't become someone she could tolerate. But I wasn't marrying her. I was marrying him, and he'd never stood between us. Not once. There's this thing that happens when a woman finally stops apologising. Everyone gets uncomfortable, especially the people who benefited from her silence. Grant didn't know what to do with me once I stopped trying to make him feel okay. I wasn't yelling, I wasn't crying. I was calm. Too calm for him. Calm like someone who's finally decided to stop negotiating their own dignity. After his "you should have stood up for yourself" comment, I didn't argue. I just nodded and walked into the bedroom, closed the door, and stared at the ceiling fan until the room blurred. The next morning, I packed a suitcase. Not all my things, just the essentials. 3 days of clothes, my laptop, my passport, the framed photo of my parents on their wedding day, which had been sitting face down since we got back from the honeymoon. I left a note, not because I owed him one, but because I didn't want him calling everyone in a panic pretending I'd gone missing. Taking space. "Don't call me. I'll reach out when I'm ready." Then I texted Mia. 5 minutes later, she replied, "The couch bed misses you. So does the cake in my fridge. Doors open. First 3 days were quiet. I slept, ate cereal on the floor, watched TikToks until my eyes hurt. Mia hovered, gently. She didn't force me to talk. She just kept doing normal things around me. Dishes, laundry, leaving little cans of peach iced tea on the nightstand. On the 4th night, I cracked. "I think I was always scared he'd choose her," I whispered while we were watching old Survivor reruns. Mia didn't pause the show, just turned to me and said, "Because deep down, you already knew he would." I started crying then, ugly crying, the kind where your chest folds in on itself and your teeth ache and your hands won't stop shaking. Because she was right. I did know. I'd known the moment he let her change the wedding playlist, the moment he brushed off her speech, the moment he didn't answer my call about the dress. I'd known, and still married him. That shame stuck in my throat like a fishbone. I told Mia everything, how Grant used to tell me I was too sensitive when I tried to explain how Valerie made me feel, How he joked that I was jealous of his mum once after I cried in the car. How he'd made it seem like I was the one causing problems every time I tried to set a boundary. And worst of all, how I'd started believing him. Mia's face was a whole range of emotions. Fury, sadness, a protective kind of disappointment. He gaslit you, she said. He didn't protect you. He managed you. Over the next week, I started pulling my life apart. I called my job and asked to work remote for a while. They said yes. I'd been a solid designer, hit my deadlines, led 2 brand refreshers. I mattered to them more than I ever seemed to matter to Grant. I called a therapist, took the earliest slot she had. I even dug out a list I'd written in my journal months before the wedding. A list of non-negotiables for marriage. Emotional safety, mutual respect, accountability. Defending me when I'm not in the room. Shared values, not just shared playlists, room to say no without punishment. And I realised, with a gut-punching clarity, Grant had never offered me a single one of those things. He offered convenience, peace, predictability. He offered the illusion of love, one that only worked if I stayed small. So, I stopped staying small. I went back to the apartment 3 weeks later. Mia came with me, not for protection, for witness. Grant was there, sitting on the couch, playing some Xbox game with the volume low. He looked up when I walked in, like I'd just come home from a Target run. He smiled. "You're back." I didn't sit. "I'm not staying," I said. "I came to talk." His smile slipped. "Okay." Mia stood in the doorway, arms crossed. I took a breath. "I need you to understand that I'm not mad because your mum's difficult. I'm not mad because she insulted me. I'm mad because you let her, because you kept choosing the easy path, and that path was never me." He stood up. "I didn't choose her. You didn't choose me either," I said. He blinked. "I married you." "No," I said. "You married the version of me who wouldn't make waves, the one who smiled through things, kept the peace. But that wasn't me. That was who I became to survive your family." He rubbed his face. "This is so dramatic." And there it was. That word again. Dramatic. A woman saying "this hurts me" was always drama to him. I smiled, and I swear it was the calmest I've ever felt. "I'm filing for annulment," I said. "Or divorce, if we're past the window. I already spoke to a lawyer." He stared at me like I'd slapped him. "You're blowing up your life over her?" I laughed. "No, Grant, I'm saving mine." It's wild how fast things unravel once you stop holding them together. He texted, called, left voicemails. Then came the guilt bombs. "I told you she'd come around eventually. She just needed time. Are you really going to throw away years over a few awkward moments? You're not thinking clearly. You'll regret this." I didn't reply. I didn't owe him clarity, not after years of spinning my feelings into confetti so he wouldn't feel discomfort. Valerie, of course, sent me a long email. "I'm sorry you felt hurt, but weddings are stressful and it wasn't my intention to make you uncomfortable. That said, a marriage is a sacred bond, and it's unfortunate you're letting temporary feelings destroy it. I expected more maturity from someone your age." I didn't reply to that either. Instead, I screenshot it and saved it in a folder called Reasons I Left. Here's what no one tells you. When you leave a man who never saw you fully, your world doesn't fall apart. It realigns. I moved in with Mia for a while. She gave me her spare key and her Wi-Fi password, and a closet shelf that held more peace than my entire marriage ever did. I found a new therapist, one who specialised in trauma recovery and codependency. Her name was Alana. She had a soft voice and a ruthless memory. She asked me, in one session, "What's the earliest memory you have of making yourself smaller to keep someone else comfortable?" I cried so hard I couldn't speak for 5 full minutes. Turns out it started before Grant, way before. 3 months later, I moved into my own place, a little studio in a converted craftsman house near the park. Exposed brick, tall windows, a fridge that hummed at night like an old radiator. The first night, I stood in the centre of the room, holding a grocery bag of essentials, ramen, tea, oat milk, and I just breathed. No one was waiting for me. No one needed me to explain my tone, my outfit, my boundaries. I sat on the floor, drank tea from a chipped mug, and wrote 3 words in my journal. I stayed too long, but not anymore. It took 6 months to finalise the paperwork. He dragged his feet, claimed he was confused, hurt, still hopeful, but eventually he signed. My favourite part of the process? During mediation, his lawyer said, "My client believes his wife was influenced by outside parties who didn't understand the family dynamic." And my lawyer, a woman named Shay, who wore red lipstick like armour, just said, "You mean other women who taught her what healthy looks like?" I almost kissed her. Valerie sent one final email after the paperwork was done. "You'll always be part of this family, whether you want to be or not. I hope you grow up someday and learn what commitment really means." I almost didn't respond. But then I thought, maybe this one time I will. So I wrote back, "Thank you for reminding me exactly why I left. I hope someday, if Grant ever does find someone new, you'll treat her better than you treated me. But based on what I've seen, I won't hold my breath. And for the record, I didn't leave because I'm not committed. I left because I finally realised I deserve someone who's committed to me, not just to keeping the peace." Then I blocked her. The hardest part of healing? Grieving a relationship that never truly existed the way you thought it did. I loved a version of Grant that only showed up when things were easy. He loved a version of me who disappeared when things got hard. We were both performing. But only one of us stopped. 6 months after the divorce was finalised, I saw Grant again, not on purpose. It was a Sunday afternoon in March, the kind of day that smells like fresh soil and last night's rain. I was at Trader Joe's grabbing frozen gnocchi and overpriced tulips when I turned the corner by the cheese section, and there he was, standing next to the Havati, holding a basket like we were still married and grocery shopping together. He looked older, not wrinkled or greying, just tired. He saw me, blinked like I was a ghost, then gave a cautious smile. I didn't smile back. He took a step forward. I took a step to the side. There were 3 people between us. A dad grabbing Lunchables, a woman with 2 bottles of wine, and an old man squinting at olives. And somehow, that buffer made it easier. "Hey," he said, raising a hand like we were old classmates. "How have you been?" I nodded. "Good." He opened his mouth like he was going to say something else. But then the old man nudged between us and muttered, "Young people move too slow these days." I took that as my cue. "Take care, guys," I said, and walked away. He didn't follow. I made it to the checkout line before my hand started shaking, not from fear, from rage, from grief, from the 1,000 words I never said and still didn't need to, because he looked at me like nothing had happened, like I was just some girl he used to know. But I wasn't just someone he used to know. I was someone he used to betray, over and over in quiet, subtle ways. The kind of betrayal that doesn't show up in bruises or broken glass, just in emails, seating charts, ignored phone calls, and, don't make it a thing, apologies. That night, I told Mia what happened. She was sitting on my new couch, painting her nails and watching some true crime doc on mute. "He, Trader Joe'd you?" she said, eyes wide. "That man has audacity for days." I laughed, for the first time in hours. Then I asked something I hadn't asked anyone before. "Do you think I was too harsh?" She didn't blink. "No," I pushed. "But what if he really didn't know? What if he didn't understand how bad it was?" She looked at me like I just asked whether the earth was round. "Ray," she said slowly, "a grown man knows when his wife is being humiliated. A good one stops it." And just like that, the doubt I'd been nursing for months evaporated. Because she was right. In therapy, Alana and I started unpacking why I stayed so long. The sessions were heavy. I found myself talking about things I hadn't thought about in years, my high school boyfriend who called me needy whenever I cried, the college roommate who told me I overreacted when her boyfriend walked in on me changing, the boss who called me intense when I asked to be included in meetings for a project I helped build. Alana traced a line through them all. "You were conditioned to believe that asking for respect made you difficult," she said, "so you stopped asking." She was right. I'd made a career out of swallowing discomfort. out of contorting myself into whatever shape someone else needed, just so I could be loved or accepted or left alone. But healing changes you, slowly, quietly, without applause. It starts with saying no to a brunch invite that feels more like obligation than joy, with turning your phone off at 9 p.m, with unfollowing people whose lives only make you question your own, with forgiving yourself for the version of you who stayed. One night, I got a message from Alison, Grant's sister. I hadn't heard from her since the divorce. We were never close, not unfriendly, just distant in that polite, southern way where people smile wide but keep their real opinions behind a layer of peach cobbler. Her message was short. Hey, I don't know if this is welcome, but I just wanted to say, I'm sorry. I should have said something sooner. About everything. I stared at it for a long time, then replied, Thank you. That means more than you know. She wrote back, Mum's been worse since you left, maybe because she knows she lost. If you ever want to talk, I'm here. I didn't take her up on it, not yet, but I saved the message. Because sometimes the smallest acknowledgements feel like revolutions. Around that same time, I started dating again. Not seriously, not with any expectations, just coffee dates, park walks, shared playlists, and book swaps. I met a guy named Devin who taught English at a charter school and made terrible puns about grammar. We went out 3 times. He listened well, laughed often, told me, without flinching, that he went to therapy and didn't expect women to be his rehab. It didn't turn into anything romantic, but it gave me hope that maybe, someday, love wouldn't mean shrinking. Spring turned to summer. I started sleeping with the windows open, learned how to make iced matcha without it tasting like regret, joined a local women's hiking group that met on Saturdays at 6:30 a.m, which sounds horrific but ended up being one of the best decisions of my year. I told the truth more often, not just to others, to myself. I said, I'm still angry. I said, I wish I'd left sooner. I said, sometimes I missed the version of him I thought was real. And none of those things cancelled out the fact that leaving was the right choice. They just made me human. Then one day, something happened that would have broken me a year ago. I got a wedding invitation in the mail from one of Grant's cousins, Chloe, the same cousin whose engagement party Valerie used to announce I wasn't a real dog person. It was a destination wedding. Savannah, October, black tie, optional. On the RSVP card, there was a box that read, We'd love for you to bring a guest. I stared at it for a full minute, then laughed. Mia was sitting at my counter, scrolling on her phone. What's funny? I held up the invitation. She snorted. Bold. I tucked the card in my junk drawer and poured us more wine. I didn't go, not because I was scared, but because I didn't need to prove anything. One night, I was reorganising my Dropbox folders and found a file titled Wedding Vows Final DocX. It was dated 3 days before our ceremony. I opened it and read the words I'd written for a man who would never hear them. You taught me that love doesn't have to be loud to be strong. That quiet consistency can be a kind of heroism. That choosing each other every day matters more than anything we can promise in front of a crowd. I read them twice, then I deleted the file. Because those words were written for a fantasy, and I was no longer in love with fantasies. By the time October rolled around, the same month I'd gotten married the year before, I was living a completely different life. Different apartment, different routines, different internal weather. On what would have been our first anniversary, I made myself a fancy dinner, set the table, lit candles, played Ella Fitzgerald on my Bluetooth speaker. Not because I was mourning, because I was celebrating. I poured a glass of wine, raised it to the quiet, and whispered, Happy first year of choosing myself. People like to romanticize heartbreak. They turn it into a plot device, a phoenix moment, a glow-up story with perfect hair and revenge outfits. But real healing isn't sexy. It's boring. It's repetitive. It's lonely. It's crying in therapy, returning your engagement ring, unsubscribing from old Netflix profiles, learning how to cook for one without making it feel like failure. But it's worth it. Because once you come out the other side, no one can make you disappear again. One night, I got a text from an unknown number. I heard you're doing well. I am happy for you. No name. But I didn't need one. I deleted it. Then opened my journal and wrote, "Closure isn't something you get from them. It's something you build, brick by quiet brick, until it surrounds you like a home." A year and a half after I walked away from Grant, I ran into someone else I never thought I'd see again. Valerie. It was at the Nashville flea market, of all places. I was digging through a crate of vintage postcards, sipping a plastic cup of lavender lemonade, when I heard that unmistakable voice behind me, clipped, performative, sharp as a manicure. "Well, look who it is." I turned slowly. She was standing there in designer sunglasses, a floral scarf and white pants that screamed dry clean only. Same polished posture, same painted-on smile. Only this time there was a flicker of something underneath it. Bitterness? Regret? I couldn't tell. "Valerie," I said flatly. She nodded at my cup. "Still into those quirky little drinks, huh?" I almost laughed. Not because it was funny. Because it was so Valerie, starting a conversation by indirectly insulting me. Like muscle memory. I raised the lemonade like a toast. "Still into veiled insults, I see." Her smile twitched. "Grant told me you moved," she said. "Yep." "And that you're seeing someone?" I wasn't, but the implication made me smile. "Not your business," I said lightly. She clicked her tongue. "You know, I never understood what happened between you two. You just disappeared." I tilted my head. "No," I said. "I finally showed up." That made her pause. She blinked behind her oversized lenses, mouth twitching like she was deciding whether to slap me with words or walk away. But then, something changed. Her posture softened. Not a lot, but enough. "I may not have been warm," she said carefully, "but I never meant to push you away." I just looked at her, because this was the first time, ever, she'd said anything even close to accountable. So I gave her the smallest piece of honesty in return. "You didn't push me away, Valerie. You taught me how far I'd go to be accepted by someone who never wanted me in the first place." She flinched. I wasn't trying to be cruel, just true. And truth, for people like her, is often the deepest cuts. She looked around, like maybe someone would save her from the discomfort. Then she pulled her out, wheeled her bag up on her shoulder and said, "Well, I hope you're happy now." "I am," I said, and I meant it. She walked away, heels clicking on concrete. I watched her go, then turned back to the postcards. Found one with an old photo of a woman in a kitchen, laughing so hard she was blurry. I bought it for $1. It sits on my fridge now, a reminder that the happiest version of me will always be the one that's real, unfiltered, blurry from laughter, untouched by other people's approval. I wish I could say everything tied up neatly after that I found the love of my life, that Valerie sent a handwritten apology, that Grant finally saw himself clearly and wrote me a letter I didn't need but appreciated anyway. But life doesn't work like that. What did happen was this. I built a life that didn't require me to shrink. I found friendships that didn't need explanations. I laughed more, ate better, slept deeper. I danced in my apartment to Beyoncé at 11 p.m. I started painting again. I took solo trips without apologising, and I stopped checking for messages from people who never protected me when it counted. There's a moment, about 6 months ago, that I still think about sometimes. I was at the dog park, even though I don't have a dog. I just like the chaos, the weird joy of strangers bonding over muddy paws and chew toys. I sat on a bench with my coffee, and a woman next to me, mid-40s, kind eyes, thick, southern accent, struck up a conversation. She told me about her rescue pit bull, Benny, showed me pictures of his Halloween costume, asked what I did for work, then asked if I had a partner. "I used to," I said. "Didn't work out." She nodded. No pity, no surprise. "Was he the one who left?" I shook my head. "I left," she smiled at that. "Good." I blinked, and she said, with total certainty, "It's always the women who leave that build the strongest lives. because we don't leave unless we have to. Then Benny jumped on her lap and licked her chin, and we laughed, and the moment passed, but I've never forgotten her words, because she was right. Leaving Grant wasn't an act of rebellion. It was an act of reclamation, of my time, my voice, my peace. People will ask, why didn't you leave sooner? And I'll say, because I was still learning how to hear myself over the noise. Because when your whole life is structured around making other people comfortable, discomfort feels like failure. But it's not. It's the first step toward freedom. I haven't heard from Grant in over a year. I assume he's still working his logistics job, still letting his mother rewrite the rules, still telling himself that silence equals peace. Maybe someday he'll meet someone who doesn't apologise for wanting more. Maybe he'll change. But I'm not waiting for that. I'm living, fully, loudly, without permission. Last month, I found the vow draft again, not the one I deleted from Dropbox. A paper copy tucked inside a notebook I hadn't opened since before the wedding. And this time, instead of crying, I smiled, because it reminded me who I was before I started disappearing. So I took a pen and rewrote it, not for a partner, for myself. I promise to listen to my voice, even when it's shaking. I promise to never trade my peace for someone else's comfort. I promise to love myself enough to leave when staying means shrinking. I promise to stay soft, not for them, but for me. I read it aloud, to my plants, my walls, my quiet apartment, and then I framed it. It sits on my desk now, right above my monitor, where I can see it every day, because I kept that vow, and I still do. People always ask, was it really that bad? Because the wounds I carry don't have visible scars. Because Valerie didn't scream. Because Grant didn't cheat. Because there was no headline-level offence. But I tell them this. The worst betrayals aren't loud. They're the ones where you realise the person beside you was always just watching it happen and doing nothing. So yes, it was that bad. And yes, leaving was the best thing I've ever done. And no, I don't regret a single step of the road that led me back to myself. Because sometimes the quietest escape is the loudest return. And I still wonder if she planned it that way all along.